Today, I'm gonna make a NAS. Not because I need one, mind you, but because I want one. Because I think they're cool. So if I look down a lot, it's because I have about 12 pages of notes on this. I went through this entire process from beginning to end to make sure that everything worked and it worked correctly and that everything was fine and dandy, and it was quite the process. So here goes. NAS stands for Network Attached Storage. This is essentially some type of computer. In my case, it's a Raspberry Pi 3B Plus, and some type of storage device. In my case, it is a Seagate 1 terabyte external hard drive. This usually lives in your house, but whether it does or not, it's attached to your network, hence the N in NAS. There are some upsides and downsides to this kind of setup. An upside is having a place to offload some of your data, which adds redundancy, and that also makes sure that your laptop, computer, whatever you're currently using at the time does not constantly stay full. And then some of the downsides are that it is much slower than just connecting this bad boy to a laptop or desktop or whatever I'm using at the time. But another upside of a NAS is that as long as you have an internet connection and the proper credentials, you can use and access that storage from anywhere on the planet. And you can have multiple people accessing the drive at once. So it's kind of like having your own personal cloud that you control, but instead of living at some big server farm owned by Google or Amazon where they get to know what you have on your bank, it lives in your house, so you control it. Okay, now some disclaimers. First, a NAS is not a replacement for backing up your data. It is some redundancy, but if the data is really important to you, then you should also have it in at least one other place that's not your home in the case of something like, a fire or a flood. Now, I typically recommend somewhere like a safety deposit box for the data, although I have been called paranoid for recommending that people keep their data in a safety deposit box because I know that's inconvenient, but it beats losing everything if it's really important, right? Second, this is not the optimal setup. I'm not going to be using this setup full time because the external hard drive that I'm using here is not rated for 24/7 use, which would de-extend, which would shorten the life of it. I also don't really need the extra storage yet, and I need both of these parts for other projects, so this isn't a permanent setup for me. Also, the Raspberry Pi 3B Plus isn't really ideal for this kind of thing since we're going to be transferring data over its Ethernet connection, and the 3B Plus only has up to 300 gigabits per second of Ethernet on board. I mean, if I had my way, I would be using the Raspberry Pi 4 for a low-cost NAS setup, not the 3, since the 4 is about 4 times as powerful. One that I want has 4 times the amount of RAM, and it has gigabit Ethernet. Not that it really matters that much because my home Ethernet is capped at 150 megabytes per second download and about 10 upload, so we would hit the limits of my Ethernet long before we hit the limits of the Raspberry Pi Ethernet. So you may ask yourself, why am I doing this? Like I said at the beginning of the video, I don't really need a NAS yet, and there are certainly better ways to do this than using a Raspberry Pi in an external hard drive. And you would be right on all accounts. But this video isn't necessarily for people that can afford thousands of dollars for a NAS system with over 300 terabytes of storage capacity, and to have somebody come to their house and set it all up for them. This video is more for people that may just be interested in learning about a NAS setup, but they don't want to spend the $1,000 until they know what they're doing. Or maybe this video could also be for somebody that needs a NAS setup at their home, but they don't have a lot of money to spend, or they're just like me and they think it's cool. You know, they're somebody that likes fun. You can get this whole setup for under $100, and that's if you have to buy everything brand spanking new. I think it would be around half that if you just bought a cheap USB drive instead of going with an actual terabyte Seagate hard drive, because that's well over half the cost of what I've got here. This can also be a very unobtrusive setup. I mean, you can take a couple of pieces of sticky tape, or double-sided tape rather, and stick to the back of the Pi, stick that to the Seagate drive, couple more pieces here, right on the wall. You wouldn't even know it was there unless you knew it was there. Look at how tiny that is. You would have to go looking for this to know it was there. And to top it all off, if you're anything like me, you probably have everything that you need for this setup just lying around. So here's what you'll need. You'll need a Raspberry Pi. In my case, it's the 3B Plus. A 4 would be more suitable for a low-cost NAS setup. Technically, I think you could use the 1 or the 2. I don't recommend the 0 because it's going to be way underpowered for what you're trying to do. And although I'm sure it's possible, I'm going to say that it's probably going to be very difficult to attach a hard drive or an external storage device to the Raspberry Pi Zero, and the Raspberry Pi has to be able to power your storage device unless, of course, you go with external power, and that's more of a pain in the butt. You'll need an external storage device of some kind. Like I said, in my case, it's going to be the Seagate 1 terabyte drive. If you're going to be running this full time, a hard drive that's rated for 24-hour use or a solid state drive would probably be a better option if you have the money to spring for it. That way they don't wear out as quickly, especially since solid state drives are not only quicker to store, they don't have any moving parts, so they're also a lot better at something that's going to be used continuously. But like I said before, honestly, a USB stick would do just fine for this if you just wanted to get started and then upgrade later down the line. You'll also need an SD card. I'm just using this little cheapo 32 gigabyte SanDisk card. Anyone over 8 gigabytes should do, as long as it's fast enough. And if you had to buy your Raspberry Pi brand new, typically if you buy it with a kit, it comes with the power supply and an SD card, and the stuff that you get with the kit should work just fine. You'll need an internet connection, preferably an Ethernet connection, as Open Media Vault should work over Wi-Fi, but it would likely be way too slow to use, so I really don't recommend it. You'll need the power system or the power cord for your Raspberry Pi, but I think I may have already mentioned that. And you'll need some programs, including Open Media Vault, Balena Etcher, Crystal Disk Mark if you want to test the speed of your drives. This is optional, and I won't be doing it in this video because when I did my testing, I did that and it took way too long. You'll need a program to see all of the IPs on your network. I typically use Advanced IP Scanner, I think, but you could also use Angry IP Scanner. And another optional step is you can actually hook your Raspberry Pi up to a secondary monitor via the HDMI and watch it run the script to show you the IP address if you don't want to download one of these IP programs on your computer. I don't know why you would go through all the extra trouble, but if you want it, it's there for you. I will be using the IP scanner because I really don't feel like digging out an HDMI and hooking it up to an external monitor and everything like that. That's just a mess. I'll leave links in the description for all the programs that you'll need down below. I'm going to be walking through all of these steps, but I'm not going to be physically doing all of them right now because you don't want to see me just go through and redo all the stuff and have it load. This video will be much quicker if I just show you what to do. So step 1, we're going to download Open Media Vault to the SD card. If your computer of choice doesn't happen to have an SD card slot or a micro SD card slot, depending on which model Pi you use, going to need an adapter as well. Once again, if you're anything like me, you probably have 1 or 7 of these laying around. So we're going to download Open Media Vault to our SD card. I've already done this, but in order to do it, goes in the adapter, plug it into your computer. We'll go to openmediavault.org. That is taking a while, isn't it? I've got it pulled up on my secondary screen here so it's easier to look at my notes. We'll go to download, ISO here, Raspberry Pi images, and we're going to do the OMV4 Raspberry Pi 2.3 plus 4 yada yada yada. Once you click on that, it'll show, or it should show it downloading here at the bottom any moment now. There we go. I'm just gonna go ahead and cancel that since I've already done it. Obviously you'll wait for it to download, and then you will open Balena Etcher, select image, you'll select the image that you just got from Open Media Vault, open, select drive, it'll pop up the correct drive, and if it doesn't, just find your flash drive. It's usually SDHC or something like that. Click continue, and then you'll click flash. I'm not gonna redo this, but from there, you'll just wait for it to do its thing. It'll tell you that it's done its thing. After it gets done, this message should pop up where Windows wants you to format the drive because Windows doesn't or can't properly read it now because now it's a boot drive. Do not do this or you'll have to redo everything. Cancel that, and then you'll go here, eject the SDHC card, pull it out. Next, we're going to place the card in the Raspberry Pi like so. Hook up our external storage. Now, if you are one of those people that wanted to see the script running on your other screen, like say if you wanted to get more in detail or you just wanted to use that to get the IP address of the Pi, now would be the time to plug it into the secondary monitor because you'll want to do that before you power it on. If not, you could corrupt the card and then it's just a whole mess. Now that everything's in there, we're gonna plug her in. You'll also want to make sure the Ethernet is plugged in before you turn your Raspberry Pi on. Not sure if I said that. I thought it was pretty self-explanatory, but just in case. Now you're gonna wait. Probably hear that motorcycle outside because the neighbor is having a moment. The tutorial that I went through said that this should take about 20 minutes for it to boot up and do its thing. In my experience, it takes over an hour for the first time, and you have to leave it be until it is completely done. If you touch it before that, chances are you're gonna corrupt the data and everything is screwed. So just leave it be, like I said, just an hour to be safe. Make sure that the red light is on constantly on your Raspberry Pi. That'll show it has power, and make sure that the green light has stopped blinking completely, and then that'll let you know that it's done initializing and it's ready to go. During this time, I recommend you have some lunch, take a nap, maybe hit the gym and get swole. Once the green light on the Raspberry Pi is stopped completely, if you are one of the people that use the HDMI, you can go on your secondary screen to find the IP address. If not, we'll use one of our programs. I'm going to use Advanced IP Scanner. Now this should scan everything from 192.168.0.1 to 192.168.254, and all IP addresses on this particular network in between. Hit scan. This should find the Pi's IP address, and then we'll type that into the web browser to find the Raspberry Pi and open Media Vault. Okay, we found the Raspberry Pi. It is 192.168.0.190. So we're gonna go to our handy dandy web browser, bin 192. I've already been here, so it recognizes me from before. And then we're going to type in our username and password. The default username is admin, and the default password is Open Media Vault. I've changed mine, which I'll talk about in a moment. Let it load. Okay, so the first thing that you're gonna wanna do, period, when you access Open Media Vault is go into your general settings and then your web administrator tab here, and you're gonna wanna change your password to something that suits you, but people online aren't going to be able to easily guess it so they can get at your stuff. We don't want anybody harvesting your data that shouldn't be. You can also use system info to see things like your CPU and memory usage and downtime, things like that. There's some handy tools to have if you plan on doing this all the time and you leave it running 24/7, but I won't get too much into that here. It's pretty self-explanatory. The next thing we're going to look at is the storage area. First, we'll look at disks, which will show off all of our active drives. And if we select one like the Seagate here, we can change settings like advanced power management, spin down time, etc., etc. That's going to be really handy if you're one of those people that likes to micromanage your drives to get the most performance or the most life out of them that you possibly can. Next, we can go to the file system. This is where you would mount or unmount drives. Obviously, mine is already mounted, but if you wanted to mount it, you would just click on the drive that you want to mount and then click mount. It would come up with a little pop-up asking you to confirm that you're indeed going to do do that. Sometimes this takes a minute, but it should ask you every single time you do an action in Open Media Vault. Now we're going to set up a shares folder so that you can access the drive along with other people at the same time. This is something that Plinky and I both use to make sure that we could both use the drive and we could use it at the same time for testing purposes when I was going through the tutorial. We will go under Access Rights Management, click on Shared Folder. As you can see, I already have the shared folder, PiNAS here, but if you wanted to add another one, then you would just click on add, give your thing a name. I've also got Whiskey Business, so we'll do this one under the name Borky Boy. Go to device. We're gonna click the Seagate drive, which is my external storage at the moment. Under permissions, we're going to go to everyone read and write to the drive. That'll allow anybody that wants to be able to access this drive without using a password. Some of the other options you can do with using a password, but that's, I'm gonna say, beyond the scope of this video because it's already getting pretty long and I don't want to explain all of that in this one video. Click save, let it do its thing. It should pop up the confirmation. Click apply, yes, let it do its thing. And now we have another shareable drive, or another shareable folder rather. Now we're going to navigate our way down to the Services tab. This has a lot of ways to access the drive, like SSHing into it, NFS, etc. Since everyone that will use this drive is on the same Wi-Fi network and we're all using Windows computers, we're going to be using SMB CIFS. That stands for Server Message Block Protocol Common Internet File System. This is what you want to use to share files over the same network if you're using Windows. If you're using a Mac, I can't help you because I don't have a Mac to be able to test this on. Okay, services, SMB, CIFS. You're going to want to click enable under general settings. That'll let you be able to use the SMB CIFS. Mine's already enabled. If it wasn't, however, you would just click that, wait for the pop-up, click apply, and then it would do its thing. We can also go to this little arrow here and click on it if we want to log out, reboot, put it into standby, or shut it down. I'm still showing you how to do this, so I'm not going to do that in this one. Next, we're going to go to our Shares tab. To create a folder, we're going to click Add, and then the Shares folder, we're going to click Borky Boy so that we can access that drive. As you can see, I've already got PiNAS and Whiskey Business here, and then we're going to navigate to the public tab, click on it, and we're going to click only guests. Despite the name sounding counterintuitive, this will allow guests on the network to access the folder without a password. Now that we have all that, click on save. Oh yeah, you also have click apply. You also have other things there like, if you want the file to be read-only for whatever reason, and a few other settings that are beyond the scope of this video. Now that we've got the shared folder set up, I'm going to show you how to access that. We can go ahead and exit out of this. We only needed it for the thing. To access the shared folder, we'll click on the Windows tab in the bottom left corner, go to Settings, and then we are going to click on the Network and Internet Settings, or Network and Sharing Center, change Advanced Sharing Settings, and we're going to make sure that Network Discovery is on. I've done it for public and private networks, but obviously you want to have it on your private network because that's the one you're trying to access. But make sure that's on, click Save Changes if it wasn't on previously, exit out of all this stuff. Now we're going to go to our file system. We're going to go to this PC, computer, map network drive. I can't read that because it's too small. So we'll do W, browse. It should find the Raspberry Pi momentarily. There we go. Raspberry Pi, Borky Boy, okay, and click finish. Now if we go to our network, you'll see that we have the Raspberry Pi, and we have Borky Boy, PiNAS, and Whiskey Business. For future reference, it doesn't really matter what letter that you map the drive to as long as you keep up with them and you don't try to map it to another one later, because that can cause some issues. If you map it to one letter now and map it to another letter later, whatever program that you're using is going to try to find it at the previous letter, and then it can just be a complete headache. Now we can copy files to and move them from the NAS. I was going to do a speed test here, but since I've already shot this video once, I will just add in a section of the previous one where I did the speed test and held it up. I think it took somewhere around 38 minutes-ish to do 1.5 GB of files, which, like I said before, not ideal, but it'll get the job done. So, you know, it's not something I would try to game off of or watch 4K video, but it more than gets the job done if you need it for your home or if you're just trying to learn. Like I said, this is more of a learning experience for me. When I am finally ready to make the jump of doing a full fat NAS system for my YouTube videos, I'm probably going to be using some better equipment, but this was more than adequate to learn on. Like I said before, I'm not going to do Crystal Disk Mark because it took way too long. Even the real world test took quite a while to transfer 1.5 GB data. So there you have it. If you liked the video or found it helpful, be sure to like it, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment if you have any questions or concerns, or